With Wuthering Waves 1.0 finally coming to an end and 1.1 coming in, it's time to finally update the 1.0 tier list. But first, today, I want to talk about a few characters that got major adjustment between the closed beta test to the release, because I feel like that would give a lot of missing context of why the tier list was formed certain way during the beta and now why they're so different today. And we're actually going to get started with one of the most popular and most powerful character right now, Verina. Wait, isn't Verina already really powerful during the beta? Well, yes, but she actually got a massive buff. See, you didn't know that, huh? You didn't know that. So, with that being said, right after you subscribe to the channel, and I also stream regularly on Twitch, we're gonna get started. In my opinion, Verina is currently the best character in the entire game, with one of the fastest ability to generate outro, on top of providing a bunch of buff as well as healing. Pretty much every single team in the game wants Verina. But do you know she actually got one of the biggest buff, like I mentioned? Verina's first passive, Gift of Nature, actually got one of the biggest change in the entire game. Now I'm gonna put the old one on the screen for you right now, see if you can spot the difference. The difference is, well, instead of casting a resident skill to trigger your passive, you now have to cast a heavy attack or a mid-air attack. They kind of did this to prevent people from just swapping to Verina, cast your skills, and then actually move out. They forced you to interact with her inherent passive instead. But little they know, this will be one of the biggest buffs they did for the entire game. Now fortunately, I recorded beta footage for every single characters in the game, so let me show you what the old beta Verina did instead. During the second closed beta, Verina pretty much played the same, but in order to proc her stacks, you have to do this like heavy attack bumper card minigame thing. In this clip, you can see that in comparison, her mid-air attack does not proc the stack at all. This here is one of the biggest buffs they can possibly give to any characters in the entire game. That's because Verina's stack mechanics is really good. It heals you for a lot, but it also additionally generates concerto energy per stacks. And back then, when you have to burn stacks like one by one, it will be so long to heal any characters as well as to generate your outro. But now you can just dump all your stacks at once by doing mid-air attack, generating you a bunch of healing and a bunch of concerto energy. And this is probably the biggest buff, in my opinion, from beta to live. I don't know, maybe because when I tell people Verina is a buffer, nobody will listen and they're like, healer can't be good, healer can't be good, and don't they buff her. So now, Verina is currently the best character in the entire game going into every single team. So pick up your Verina right now, today, in the subscribe button. The next character to cover is probably one of the fan favorite, Genshin. In my opinion right now, Genshin sit at a okay spot being a pretty decent support. Her main job is just to spam ults to group enemy continuously for like AoE character like Havoc Rover. The biggest problem with Genshin is always like, in order to get her shield or healing, you have to be doing these long animation on field, which is just really long. Not only you have to generate her forte circuit, then you have to spend a long time channeling it to actually get the effect, and that's just not very good. And that is still kind of true. What they did buff is that they buffed that to be a little better, but they buffed many other aspects of her kit as well. Genshin actually generated Forte Circuit a lot slower on her basic attack during the beta, in comparison now where she actually generates a more respectable amount, so if you're putting her onto the field and attack, you're able to get your Forte Circuit up a lot faster. But you know what really was the problem with Genshin? Her ult was not only slow, but it has a pretty small radius. Notice how in the previous clip, I only sucked it up one enemy even though there's a bunch of enemies next to each other. Here you can see that the enemy gets stuck in one step at a time slowly. And here is what it is on live right now. You can see that it's almost instantaneous that they get sucked to the center. But the biggest buff that Genshin probably got is the release of Havoc Rover. Genshin Suction just synergized extremely well with the way Havoc Rover is played, having a ult that does massive nuke in a small radius. But on top of that, Havoc Rover is just one of the best characters to actually take advantage of Genshin outro, which empowered their ult's damage by 38% in a damage deepened form. If you think about it right now, not a lot of characters can really take advantage of this buff right here, other than Havoc Rover, which again wasn't in the beta. So this is probably the biggest buff that Genshin got. Enough talk about buff, it's time to talk about a character that got massively nerfed, Karo. Karo got so many scaling adjustments between the beta to the release, all of his damage just pretty much went down on the board. But the biggest thing that affected him well, Outro no longer stay after you switch the character off the field. Yinlin just looked like the obvious support character choice for Karo since her Outro amplify electro damage as well as resonance liberation damage, and one of the best characters that can take advantage of both of these at the same time is Karo. While this buff disappears when you're outside of the field, if you're doing swap cancel fast enough, you can see that Karo is still going to be attacking during your swap cancel, and the buff doesn't disappear if you swap back to it fast enough. One of Karo's biggest problem is that you're pretty reliant on hitting everything in your ult, and without the power of swap cancelling, this could be very detrimental to overall your DPS output, or you risk losing that buff. I think Karo Yinlin was expected to be one of the best Electro team in the entire game, and now it is still a pretty decent team, it just, well, not that up high anymore. So this is actually a massive nerf on any tier list out there. The next one to talk about could be very surprising. I think this is currently one of the most underrated 4-star DPS right now, and that is Chia. Chia went through one of the most interesting iterations in my experience. During the first closed beta, she was very powerful, her skill was able to destroy any enemy, but in return her normal attack was not very good at all. Her normal attack did physical damage instead of fusion damage. Chia then went through one of the most major adjustments in the second closed beta. Her dodge counter does very little damage. You can see that her dodge counter here only does 2000 damage each, even though she's a level 70 Chia. And then her skills is incredibly hard to use because you have to fire all bullets, and then it still doesn't do that much damage. One of the biggest problems with Chia is that it is really hard to build bullets on her skills, and even then her skill has a lot of problems, which included long cast time. So it feels like a waste to just, well, ruin it. And so they buffed it. One of the easiest aspects to use about Chia, her normal attack. Chia's normal attack now has one of the highest scaling in the entire game. Specifically, her dodge counter has 200% scaling only at level 3. This footage is sent to me by the exact same Twitch viewer, and this dodge counter damage is, oh my god, honestly actually illegal. They buffed this dodge counter damage by so much that it just does infinite damage now. Chia also have one of the best scaling in the entire game. Even at level 1, it is already reaching something like 800% scaling. In comparison to my level 5 Havoc Rover, it is at 1000% scaling. So honestly, Chia ults as well as Havoc Rover ults are somewhat comparable. But the thing is, Chia also have the advantage of being really good in bosses, again thanks to her high dodge counter scaling. So this is a character that's both good in AoE situation and in single target situation. I think this is currently one of the most underrated 4-star damage dealer in the entire game, and it's probably going to be my next character that I'll pick up immediately since, well, I wasted all my resources on Lingang. Chia got so much buff since the second closed beta that I think she currently deserves a really high spot on any tier list out there. I think people are a little hesitant to try her because of the impression they have from her from the second closed beta, as well as the fact that she's a character given for you for free at the beginning of the game. But I think this is one of the best characters in the game right now, suitable for all situations, and I can encourage people to give her a try. The final character that got a major buff is actually Lingang. Due to the second closed beta, Lingang was probably one of the worst characters out there. He was extremely clunky, his 14 mechanics is really bad because you have this weird airwalk mechanics, and he has really weird and janky like hitbox as well as hurtbox. Since then, the developer has come out in a developer note saying that they will adjust Lingyang's moveset for a better overall elevated combat experience. The developer has specifically said that they will adjust Lingang moveset for a better experience, and so therefore, since the game release, he got a massive buff. And so on release, I picked up Lingang to be my main character, and he's actually really good right now. I was able to beat the difficulty 6 morning act with ease using this character. You can check out the video I sent. Actually, just kidding. I think the developer completely forgot the fact that they said they were going to buff him. I think they just forgot about this character. I think they just didn't buff him at all. In fact, this character is actually worse now. The one thing that they did change about him since the beta is that his sequence 4 now buff glacial damage bonus instead of attack. That means if you pair him with any non-glacial characters in the future, they actually can't take advantage of this buff here since it only buff glacial damage now. Wow. I think Lingyang is a character right now where even if you put 2x the investment in, you do like half the damage compared to like any other character in the game. So during the second closed beta, he was D tier with potential to be better in the future to get buff. And now I think this character is officially F tier, potentially the worst character in the entire game. So yeah, this character got fucked. Can someone please refund all the resource I dumped into this garbage character, please? But with that being said, those are 5 characters that got major changes in the second closed beta, and now to release, they have their spot kind of move up or down in your corresponding tier list. Now, one of the characters that I think is an honorable mention, but I didn't include, is actually the main characters. Specifically, the Spectre main characters. The main characters was already really good during the first or second closed beta, but the release of Havoc Rover made these characters even more insane. Now, I don't know if you consider these to be the same characters since they're both the main characters. Some people consider it to be the same, some people consider them not to be the same. But in any cases, the main character is currently one of the best characters in this game right now. And the release of Havoc Rover definitely made some other characters shine even more, like again, Genshin. So there's some impact there as well. But since this is a new character, I didn't include it in this video. But that being said, if you enjoyed watching this video, or if you would like a complete tier list, I guess, which I can make one, then subscribe as always. Like, comment, I'll see you all next time, okay? Bye!